Hi again then guys, and welcome to the 70th episode of B-Road Ballers, the review series for Gran Turismo's hot hatches, and also hatchbacks which aren't necessarily traditional hot hatches, but they can be made to be hot with upgrades, or they can go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, literally the opposite end of the spectrum, and be complete sleeper cars. Now I would say to some degree this is one of those vehicles. Now a sleeper can only really last so long, because once enough people know about it, it's kind of not really a sleeper anymore, because the whole point of a sleeper is it's of course a car that's faster, or in any particular way more competitive than it looks. But once enough people know about it, it kind of loses that appeal to some degree. It's still a sleeper car technically, but everybody knows that. Now this vehicle I would say is borderline on that territory, because there are a lot of people who really like this car on Gran Turismo and who also realise how good it can be. So whether or not it's actually still a sleeper, well, I would say the jury could still be out on that. What isn't up for debate though is whether or not this car is good, because it really is. Now I am a huge fan of the Fiat Panda. That may sound like a strange statement to make, especially given the kind of cars that we discuss on the channel, but I love cars from all kinds of category, as many of you guys do as well. The Panda though, especially in its newer form, has a very particular model which I love, and that's the 100 HP. I consider that to be one of the best small hot hatches ever made. It's kind of like the modern equivalent of vehicles like the 205 GTI or the Renault 5 GT. Those small, super compact, practical daily runabouts that have the performance and fun factor which, before they came on the scene, would have usually been reserved just to sports cars. That's a great concept, and it's no wonder that those cars are popular. This particular version of the Panda though, which is of course the older shape machine, doesn't quite have that kind of status, because the Panda 100 HP is very much so a hot hatch. It's designed to look good, it's designed to stand out and catch attention, and it's designed to be fun. This car is not. This car is designed to be a daily runabout. Now interestingly, this car was designed by Bertoni, and he himself considers it to be, at least according to the information available on Gran Turismo, his best design work ever. And although that may sound like a strange thing to say, I can understand what he means by that. To design a car which would go on to have so much influence and be so popular, well yeah, of course that's a great achievement. Many of the other vehicles that, not just Bertoni, but other designers like Pininfarina, Zagato, various others, many of the cars that they design might be one-off creations, concept cars, prototypes, coach-built versions of existing cars, and various other types of ultra-rare or otherwise exotic vehicle. They have made some mass production models, of course, but not that many if you really consider their body of work. So to have a car as influential and as widely loved as the Panda, yeah, I can understand why he would have this as his greatest work. Now this car on Gran Turismo is, like some other hatches and other vehicles in general, very, very easy to underestimate. Of course it is. It's an old Fiat. Everyone is going to underestimate it. So the question is, what does it have to offer? Because first of all, you've got a price tag of just under 15 grand. That's dirt cheap. It's a small car, but not ridiculously small. It's actually got quite a chunky image, and that's appealing. It's not necessarily a hot vehicle, but it has an appearance which is suitably rugged and looks like it can take whatever life throws at it. That's the kind of appearance that really you want, kind of like the hot hatch equivalent of something like a Land Rover. Now this particular vehicle is front-wheel drive, not too surprisingly. It has a 1 litre turbo engine, and it actually puts down some really impressive numbers. 220 horsepower from a 1 litre engine is very, very impressive. That's almost the kind of power that you'd typically expect from a motorcycle engine, not a small Fiat engine. Now it also puts out an even more impressive 236 foot-pounds of torque, which again for a 1 litre engine is a huge amount of torque. That's the kind of torque which you'd get usually from something like a Honda VTEC with tuning, which is of course a much larger engine. Again, very impressive. Add on top of that the fact that this car only weighs 654 kilos, which, despite the fact that it's not ultra small, actually means that its weight can put some K cars to shame. And the horsepower per tonne is 336, which again is very impressive. And you get yourself an all-round package which could just be superb. Now for 15 grand, and with the aforementioned numbers, it would be pretty difficult for this to turn out to be a bad car. But when you factor in the fact that it has a PP of 507, which is perhaps too high to race it at competitively, but it's interesting to know that it can go that high, means that the car has a decent competitive range. You can take it up around 500 pp if you see fit, and having that kind of potential is a good thing to have, especially from a 15 grand car. Now, what's it like to drive? What does it perform like? Well, the handling is, as you'd probably expect, incredible. It's easy to drive, it's one of the most beginner-friendly classic hatches you can get, it's relatively unassuming, and although it's not really a sports hatch of the highest tier, it can certainly cope with the power and performance that you can give it remarkably well. It actually handles in a very similar way to some of the old-school rally-based vehicles. Now, of course, it is a front-wheel drive car, so that comparison only goes so far, but still, it has that kind of old-school rough-and-tumble kind of feel to it, which again complements the visual design. Now, overall, would I recommend this? And if so, to who and for what? Well, yeah, it goes without saying, of course I would recommend it. As far as who I'd recommend it for, I would say this is the kind of hatchback which you should get definitely if you're a fan of sleeper cars, and also if you need a hatchback that doesn't necessarily have huge power. Maybe something more for tighter technical circuits, seasonal events, that kind of thing. So if you haven't checked out this car, which many people haven't, I'd definitely recommend doing so. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.